Hello and welcome. My name is Nadine and you're watching Spaghetti Junction. I'm doing a little mini-series all about traveling as a single parent with a child, and today is the first episode, and I just want to talk a little bit about how I got into traveling and how I initially started traveling when my daughter Betty was little. I will put all the episodes in a little playlist. You can click up there to see the other episodes, and I will also put it in the info box below. I'm planning to do a few episodes and I'm not going to repeat myself, so everything is hopefully going to be short and sharp, and you should get through everything pretty easily if you're interested in this topic. I just noticed that there isn't much on this topic on YouTube, so I thought, why not? Why not talk about it? We first started traveling when Betty was about 4 years old. Only my opinion, but I just think there isn't much of a point to travel far with a child when they're little, when they're babies or toddlers, because in my experience, they don't really care where they are. When they're little, all they want is cuddles and food and sleep and play, and that's about it. So we started going away when Betty was 4. I hadn't been very far until then. And the first trip we did, we went camping. And it was a single parent camping holiday. So we weren't by ourselves, we were with a little group, and it was all organized, and I didn't even have my own tent. They provided the tent, and I saw that advertised somewhere. I thought it would be quite a nice experience to try out, and I had a car at the time. It was only, I think it was only 2 nights, yes, because I remember the nights, personally for me, the nights were the worst. I would say this straight away, I'm not a camper. Neither, actually, maybe I had camped at a festival before when I was young and childless. But, so anyway, yeah, we went to somewhere in England. It was a few hours drive away in a forest from where we lived. I just thought we'd try out what it's like. And I must say the experience itself was really great. I think it's really great for kids to be outside all day and play, and there wasn't really much other distraction than just a few trees on the camping ground. There was nothing much else. We did day trips, organized day trips during the day, which was nice. But I found it so fascinating how the kids are just out all day and just playing with sticks and picking berries. That was amazing, because we lived in London at the time and we really didn't have that. For me, the nights, this is not going to be the topic of this video, but for me, 2 nights in a tent without heating, it was just a nightmare, and I suffered so much. So I'm just going to say camping is really not for me. I haven't done it since. I personally won't do it again. For Betty, it was great. She loved being outside all day. She slept through like a rock at night. But that was the first kind of little trip away. There weren't really proper big holidays. I just picked little trips because I wanted to just get a bit of experience in traveling and get my confidence back. And also I wanted to see how Betty reacts when she's away from home, because every child can be different. You know, some kids really just don't, you know, they need breaks and they need quiet times, and some kids are really active and want to be out all day. So I didn't really know what would happen when we're away, and I picked places where we'd be in a safe environment. You know, I wouldn't take her really far and not knowing the language and not knowing what to eat. So our first trips were within the UK. So the second trip we did was over Christmas time, and she was almost 5, and we went to Butlins. And if you don't know what Butlins is, it's a little holiday park type of thing in the UK, and that was also a couple of car hours away in the car, couple of driving hours away in the car. And it was winter time, so there were no outdoor activities. I think usually in summer you can go outside as well, and there are activities. So you pick your accommodation depending on the size of your party and the level of luxury you need. So we had a basic apartment for the 2 of us, and all the activities took place in some sort of indoor arena hall kind of place. And there was an indoor play center and bouncy castle type things. There were rides, and then they had a couple of stages, and one stage was smaller during the day, and they had little characters coming on stage and dancing, and the kids could dance along. And there was also a little area where they had like puppet shows and smaller shows, and a big stage for the evening where they had bigger shows. And And I would say the experience was great for Betty. She really enjoyed it, but it wasn't really for me. It was, I just found the noises and the lights, and it was really restrained. I found all of that very hard work for my adult senses. Betty was fine. She was not out, but up all day looking at everything, and I took her to every show I could. So experience-wise, it was a good experience for her. But that's when I realized that when you go away with your child, it's really important that you have a good time as well. And also I think your child needs to learn to compromise, that a holiday shouldn't just all be about child activities, or you should find activities that you both enjoy. By then, I knew that Betty is a totally active child who wants to do things all the time, and she's not crazy about taking breaks and taking it easy. The next couple of trips we did was around the time when she was turning 5 or just turned 5, and we went to Bristol and Somerset, and we went around Kent, and I had a car at the time, so we were just driving there, and it was a bit of a practice for me as well, and also to see, do they get car sick, how long do they want to sit in the car or not want to sit in a car. And I would recommend, if you take little trips away like that, don't go too far from home to start off with. Stay a couple of hours away from home, just so the environment isn't too unfamiliar. I said that already. Make sure you're somewhere where you know the food, where you understand how to grab a taxi or to jump on a bus, rather than being somewhere in a foreign country where you don't understand anything. So that's why we stayed in the UK. And I would also recommend do something that is the opposite to what your child is used to. So at the time we were in London, so Betty was used to busy city life. So I wanted to take her somewhere that was a little bit more quieter and low-key. So Bristol is a medium-sized town. We could still walk everywhere during the day, and then Somerset is like the countryside around there, and we did a couple of walks. And in Kent it was very similar. We were by the seaside and we looked around some small towns just to see how she'll cope being out all day or being out for a little bit of a longer period of time. But I wanted to make sure I'm still always near a Greggs and I can grab a sausage roll or have a hot chocolate if she gets tired or grumpy or we need a break. So nothing too dangerous. In terms of walking as well, I was trying to see how long she can walk in a day until she gets tired, or will she get grumpy, or will she have a meltdown, but without overdoing it. I was making sure that the accommodation we're staying was always close enough so we could go back if we needed a nap. And these 2 trips, I would say, were also trips where we both had fun. I didn't just take her away just so she has a good time. It was very interesting for me to look around some new towns, new areas, and get out of the city. So that definitely made it nice for both of us. And it was around these 2 trips that I discovered that we have a really good time when we're away together. Because before you've been away with your child, you don't really know. It could be incredibly stressful. It could be really freaking the child out to be away from home. You just don't know until you try. But in Somerset and in Kent, I did discover that we both have a really, it's almost like we're going away as friends. I mean, I'm still doing the mothering, obviously, and I'm in charge of what's happening and where we're going. You don't have the everyday stress of, get ready for school and pack your bags and tidy your room, and we could be a little bit more relaxed. So that was really nice. And from then on, literally every holiday we've been to, every time we've been away, we never argue. We're like best friends. We have the best time in our lives. And I'm not just saying this for this video. It's really like that. And through these little trips, that gave me confidence to continue and to go a little bit further and longer. We then went to Liverpool and we did a little Beatles trip, because Betty had discovered the Beatles and she was really interested in the music. So I took her to Liverpool for a few nights and we stayed in an Airbnb in quite central in the city centre. And again, it was an incredible experience. I really liked the Beatles as well. And we went to all the Beatles museums and Beatles related things there was to see. And I remember it was February, it was freezing. but if you travel off season, everything is cheaper and not that busy. And it didn't bother us that much. We just wrapped up warm, and looking at things really distracted us from the cold. And one of my favorite things ever I did on that trip with her, that I will always remember, I hope she will as well, but it was the first time that she heard live music, and I took her to the Cavern Club. The layout of the Cavern Club is like a pub, but it's more like a tourist attraction. So during the day they have cover bands, Beatle cover bands playing and cover acts, and 80% of the music they play is Beatles, but they also play other music from around that time, the 60s. And again, I didn't know how Betty would react, because it could have potentially been too noisy for her or too busy. So, and in the Cavern Club you have to go down the stairs, and it's a little bit dingy. And it wasn't far from our Airbnb where we were staying. And I went with a thought in the back of my mind that if it's too much for her, we can leave anytime. It wasn't far from where we were staying. But I just really wanted her to listen to live music. And it was the first time she listened to live music in her life. And it was just such a great experience. I think we stayed for 2 or 3 hours. And people were coming in and out, and you could grab a seat or stand on the corner and you could dance or not dance. And it was totally fine. She recognized some songs and we had a bit of a dance. Yeah, so that was great, and it was an amazing memory. And that was probably when I noticed that just don't be scared to do things. I think being scared of doing something is worse than trying something and potentially having an amazing memory. Just make sure you're safe. So then she was 6, and we took our first couple of trips into Europe, but we were staying with friends. So I knew that she's sociable enough and capable enough to be with other people and adult friends as well, and not, sorry to say this, but not get on their nerves, because not everybody loves having kids around. And we were staying with some adult friends of mine, and I don't think Betty was too annoying. I think she was quite good with socializing and having little conversations, and we went out by ourselves during the day. But yeah, it was us venturing abroad, and it was great, and we managed okay. I don't want to go into too much detail because it's going to be too long. Moving forward a little bit, then when Betty was 8, we took our first couple of trips abroad by ourselves. Okay, let's just say semi-abroad, because we went to the Edinburgh Festival in summer, and it's not really going abroad, it's going from England to Scotland. So it wasn't really that much of a culture shock, but neither of us had been in Scotland before. And Edinburgh Festival gets incredibly busy. So I wouldn't recommend to do this as a first trip when you're not very confident. And this is a really strict rule to stick to when you go to Edinburgh. You have to make sure you're not just looking after your child pays attention where they are going and that you're near, because it just gets so busy. So we went pretty much without a plan, because I was so overwhelmed with the choices of shows that you can book, that I just thought there'd probably be street performers, and not having been to Edinburgh before, there'd be enough to see. So we just went for 2 nights, and it was pretty rainy, and we just walked around Edinburgh, and it was again a great experience. We saw lots of street performers. There are a couple of shows that are free, and then afterwards you can pay a donation if you enjoyed the show. But we just watched, they're not all kids shows. The indoor shows that we saw, there were kids shows. They're like science experiments and games they play. But a lot of the outdoor shows, they perform in the streets. There are all sorts of contortionists and jugglers and comedians. So it's a very good place to go if you want, again, balance, something for your child to enjoy, but something for you to enjoy as well. Lots of little shops you can go to, nice individual shops rather than big chains. And Edinburgh itself is just beautiful. I think it's one of the most beautiful cities in Europe, probably, in my opinion. So definitely worth a trip, but not as a first trip. But if you're a little bit more confident, and when your child definitely needs to be big enough and able to walk all day and be up and not be overwhelmed. Moving on, 3 years later from our first camping trip in 2015, then at the end of 2018 I finally felt confident enough that we would take holidays abroad. In October 2018 we went to Spain, and then in December 2018 we went to the south of France. The idea with Spain was initially I thought we could maybe go to Barcelona, and I looked up some flights and I discovered a town called Girona, and it's technically it's a further away airport to Barcelona, but it's also a small town. And I looked it up and I thought, oh, this looks like quite a nice small town just to stay there and have a few days there. So I think we stayed 3 or 4 nights. We just went out to explore the town. We went to another little old town, and one day we did a cycle tour around some volcano mountains, and one day we went into Barcelona. The thing with Spain, with me, my biggest fear going away is getting lost in the middle of nowhere and taking public transport when I don't know my way around. This was the biggest challenge and the biggest fear for me. Before I went, I prepared myself to death. I try and look up everything and read up, and also what's really useful, if wherever you stay, whether it's an Airbnb or a hotel or whatever accommodation, what I always do, I check out where I want to go or what transport I think is appropriate for us, and then I write a quick mail and say, hey, I looked this up to go wherever, does that sound right, can you maybe help me? Usually people are always helpful. But yeah, we took some buses to somewhere in a foreign country. Everything was 100% fine and good, and we never got lost, and it's just all about building up your confidence. I will probably make another video just about eating with a child on holiday, but by the time we were ready to go to Spain and France, I did explain to her that the food is a little bit different and they use different flavors and spices or whatever. And I said to her, we will try and find kids' food, but if something tastes a little bit different and it's not totally disgusting to your palate, try and eat it. Let's not try and make a big deal out of every meal. And we always stay in Airbnb, so I'll make sure I cook a breakfast, and we can also cook meals at the place where we're staying. But you know, I don't want to eat pasta with butter every night, so it's a bit of a compromise situation again, that we might go somewhere and if there's a little bit of tomato in your pasta sauce, it's not a reason to throw the towel and give up and just eat it. And then we went to the south of France over New Year's Eve, and that was amazing. Again, I'm quite into finding budget deals. I don't know whether it sounds like I'm loaded and I'm going on holidays all the time, but I have my ways of budgeting and finding good deals, which I will talk about in another video. Don't forget to click on the playlist up there and watch the other videos. So yeah, you don't need to be rich to go to the south of France over New Year's Eve. And we picked to stay in Cannes because Cannes had fireworks on New Year's Eve, and I wanted to be able to see the fireworks but then walk home or get home easily, because the fireworks are at midnight and usually an 8-year-old doesn't stay up that late. And I found a lovely little Airbnb in the center of Cannes, and from Cannes it is quite easy to go to visit other places like Nice and Monaco and whatever else there is. Like, it's all on the south coast of France, and you can take the bus, but we just went by train. So it's just a good idea to have a broad idea of where you want to go. It depends where we go. If I know that I roughly do a trip a day to another city, I don't need to look up every detail. I usually just look up how to get somewhere, and then in the city, what are the main attractions, and especially if it's a city where you can walk around, that's small enough where you don't need to take public transport. It's quite easy to do everything in a day. So that's how we went about the south of France. And again, my biggest fear is getting from the airport or the train station where you arrive to the Airbnb or wherever accommodation you're staying. So that's my first fear. Then my second fear is, once I'm at the accommodation, how do I get around to look at things? But again, I messaged the host once I did my own research. I would try and find out as much as I can by myself and then ask questions, just with the things I'm most insecure about. Also, when it comes to finding a supermarket, I look on Gmap first, type in the address of the place we're staying, and as you type in supermarket near wherever you are, and then you look up what supermarkets you see near you. So that's what I would do, and then I message the host and say, oh, this is the nearest supermarket that I've seen on the map. Is that right, or is there a closer one? Because there could be a bigger one or a closer supermarket to you that is not on the map, or the host might have some secret tip for you. I will do some more separate videos on how we eat when we're abroad, how we find food, and a few other things which you will all be able to watch very soon. So I think this is it for now. I really hope you enjoyed this, and my channel is still new, so I'd really appreciate if you subscribe if you like this video, because it would just help me to get this channel going a little bit more. And if you have anything to say, any questions or any idea for more videos, please put them in the comments below. Okay, thank you. Bye.